It was Tuesday morning. As Trump was drinking his morning coffee, one of his Florida team members hurried into the room. He had a schedule in hand. "Mr. President, there's a studio visit in Miami today for a new media partnership. It starts at 11 o'clock. Trump nodded. "When you say studio, it sounds like a movie. Do you have a camera?" "Yes, sir, there are a few podcasts being recorded as well." Trump straightened his tie. "Great, then the spotlight is mine." The motorcade set off. The address was entered. But no one noticed that there was another studio sharing the same street as the media company Trump was supposed to be on. A smaller, more amateurish, but much more intimate place. 2 mics and a maybe, an independent podcast studio run by college students. The door opened. Trump walked in. And inside, he was greeted by only 3 bewildered young men and a microphone. A boy with glasses spoke first. "Mr. Donald Trump?" Trump walked in. "Yes, come in. I'm here in the studio. You were expecting me, weren't you?" The 3 young men looked at each other. Their eyes were wide. One of them whispered, "Brother, that Trump. Trump walked in and sat in front of the microphone. "Well, let's get started. Time is precious," one of the young men asked in a shaky voice. "So, Mr. President, this was our school project podcast. There were no interviews today." Trump raised his eyebrows. "Then this is your first special episode. Dear viewers, sometimes life sits you at a table you never planned to sit at. If you find the story interesting, subscribe to the channel, because this story will soon go down in studio history." Trump leaned over the table. What was the concept? Before the children could answer, Trump continued, "Today I will present you with an episode titled The Art of Speaking and Managing Chaos." And the microphone was turned on. Trump began, "Greetings, everyone. Today I will tell you how to turn unexpected moments into an advantage. For example, imagine accidentally entering a podcast studio, and lo and behold, you have recorded the most listened to episode of your life." The young people could not believe their eyes. Trump was as relaxed as if he had been at that table for years. His tone of voice was natural, humorous, and self-confident. One of them quietly pressed record. The other went live on social media. Trump continued, "Do you know what the most powerful aspect of communication is? When you say to the other person, 'I am here, I am listening to you,' and you do it sincerely. That is why I am here today. While you were waiting for the wrong man, I found myself in the right place." There was no crowd, but those 3 young people could not take their eyes off. Trump was speaking like a mentor that day, not like a former president. Trump paused for a moment, turned his eyes to the young people. "Why are you doing this podcast?" The one with glasses swallowed. "To make our voices heard." Trump nodded. "Then let this be the moment when your voices are heard." Dear viewers, a school project is making history right now with Trump's spontaneous participation. If you like stories like this, please subscribe. Because we don't just tell stories here, we record life surprise moments. Trump reached for the buttons at the registration desk. "Now we'll play some music, then we'll get a commercial." One of the young men shouted, "We don't have a sponsor." Trump smiled. "We do, starting today. The first episode is sponsored by Life's Surprises." By the end of that day, the podcast recording had lasted exactly 42 minutes. And when that episode was uploaded to the internet, it was titled, Episode 7, Trump Came Today. For real. Trump was drinking his second coffee at the microphone when the podcast recording ended, but the energy inside did not. The 3 young people were still trying to figure out what was going on. Jack, who was wearing glasses, repeated with his voice hoarse, "Trump recorded a 42-minute episode with us." The other boy, Dylan, who was wearing a hoodie, was still checking his headphones with his hand. "Dude, did we actually record? Is there an audio recording?" The third, Melanie, glanced at the screen and held her breath. "Guys, we're live. We have 7,000 people watching us on Twitch." Trump leaned back. "For those who don't believe me, here's some live evidence. Now tell me, how many people normally watch this podcast?" "I mean, usually 9, but one of them is my mom," Jack said. Trump laughed. More than your mom came today. So when the right thing happens at the right time, things change. The door opened. A few more students stuck their heads in. Is it really happening here right now? They said. The flow that followed did not stop. The room was full in 20 minutes. Some were secretly filming, some were too surprised to speak. Trump was in the middle of the room, but it felt like he had been there for years. Dear viewers, sometimes it's not the right guest on a show, it's the right timing. If you're watching this story right now, subscribe to our channel, because this is an episode that was never planned but will always be remembered. Trump turned to the youth. So where do you want to take this podcast? Melanie interjected. Actually, our hope is to be the voice of the youth, but sometimes it seems like no one is listening. Trump bowed. Wrong. Sometimes you just don't knock on the right door. I accidentally knocked on your door today, but maybe you've been telling the right story for years. The comments were raining down on the Twitch chat at the time. Is Trump real? Best crossover. These kids are famous now, the youth shouted excitedly as they read the comments. Jack rubbed his eyes. Someone wants to be a sponsor, really. Trump put his hands on the table. And here we go. Every podcast starts with episode 1, but the legendary ones are remembered with a surprise guest. The crowd inside had spilled into the hallways. Even the school administrators came up and asked, "Is this really happening?" A student affairs officer came in excitedly. "Mr. Trump, the school newspaper wants to do an interview." Trump nodded. "My agenda is done. I'm here now. Come on, microphones for everyone." As people gathered around Trump's table, the space became a media lab. Jack turned the camera on Trump. "One last question. What should this episode be called?" Trump answered without thinking, "Wrong door, right mic." And at that moment, Melanie posted the following headline on Twitch: "Trump accidentally joins college podcast, then becomes host." And hours later, it became the most watched video not only on Twitch, but also on YouTube. The podcast reached 1 million streams in one day. Dear viewers, this story is not just about the power of coincidence, but about how you grow when you are caught off guard. If you believe in moments like these, write in the comments, have you ever started something by mistake and now you are glad you did? Trump took the microphone as he closed the segment. He spoke one last time. "I walked into a studio today and I realized something. Leadership is not on the podium, it is in the young people on the other end of the microphone. When they make their voices heard, this country becomes younger." Then he turned to the young people. "This team can be my new media consultants." Jack chuckled. "We need credits to graduate, we just need to get a job." Trump smiled. "It's not credits, it's podcast points now." When Trump left the studio, it wasn't just his car waiting outside. Young people from all over the campus were trying to film him with their phone cameras, lining up to say, "I was there." But before Trump headed for the door, he turned back to look at the 3 young people inside, Jack, Melanie, and Dylan. They were like experienced presenters who had made their own voices heard all over the world, not 3 students doing a class project. Trump approached Melanie and turned to her. "People are listening to you now, but the real question is, what are you going to say?" Melanie paused for a moment. "When they hear us, let them know they're not alone." Trump narrowed his eyes and smiled. "Good, that's real leadership, not talking but announcing." Jack was still staring at the microphone in surprise. "Mr. Trump, we know you came here by mistake, but this was the right moment of our lives." Trump nodded slowly. "Most right moments start when you knock on the wrong door." Trump turned to the crowd before getting into his car. It was like he was holding a press conference there, but this time there was no prompter, only his heart. "I spoke to young people today. I gave a real speech. No political texts, no campaign messages, just his heart." The crowd listened quietly. This was different from the Trump tone they were used to, lower, more thoughtful. "I am often asked, 'Mr. Trump, how do you make such a big noise?' Today my answer changed, because sometimes it's not the sound that needs to be magnified, but the listening." Dear viewers, if you've followed this story this far and are also touched by this silent movement, please subscribe. This is a channel where unexpected moments change lives. Before getting into his car, Trump handed Jack a card. "The sponsor of the second season of your podcast is my foundation." Tears welled up in Jack's eyes. "Really?" Trump winked, "but on one condition. The title of the first episode of the new season will be Accidentally Coming to the Right Place." That day, the school administration even gave the podcast club a special award. The university newspaper made headlines with an article titled, "Trump's 42-minute silent alliance with youth." And the following week, the podcast became #1 trending on Apple Podcasts. But the story didn't end there. A few days later, Trump met with his advisors at Mar-a-Lago. As usual, a strategy meeting was planned. But Trump played that day's podcast episode in the middle of the table. He listened to his own voice. The moments when the young people laughed, Melanie's heartfelt comments, the warmth of Dylan's questions. And then he pulled out the card he had received that day from the inside pocket of his jacket. On the back of the card was a sentence Melanie had written, "When you spoke, we were surprised, but when you listened, we believed." Trump leaned back. He closed his eyes. Sometimes walking into the wrong studio leaves a much stronger memory than an image you've built over the years. That night, social media was awash with Trump's podcast footage. But this time, Trump didn't share anything. He just wrote a short note on his official account. "I kept quiet today because the microphone was with the youth." Two mix and a miracle. And it was true, because sometimes a youth club takes the pulse of a country again. Dear viewers, we all remembered something in this story. The right microphone is with the open-hearted. Write in the comments, have you ever accidentally fallen into the right moment? And don't forget to subscribe, because our next story may come out through the door you accidentally entered